contrary to what Bob is worried about, we're going to have some fun here today. Geez, he was just here like 1990. It was like yesterday.
Yeah.
I thought maybe we'd start with a couple of questions sort of that let you get to know Bob a little bit. So they played one of the great Super Bowls of all time last month. Which of the teams did you like?
Really? We're going to do sports questions?
That's kind of what I thought.
I don't even know who plays.
That's right, you don't. Tomorrow's the Oscar broadcast. Who would you think is the best picture nominee?
I have no idea.
Because you don't watch a lot of movies.
Right, yeah. That's
Breaking Bad or Sopranos, which of those series did you like best?
You're just not on my channel.
Because you live, what I'm trying to convey is you live in Bob world.
Right.
What do you do? Tell them what you do now.
I live in the scientific bubble. That's just about it. I mean, it's my work is my life. Whether I'm working or having fun, it's pretty much the same thing. So it's, I don't know, I pretty much do the same thing.
Where you live and what you do, your business.
I unfortunately live in Michigan.
And you're glad to be in Arizona.
Yeah, I would really like to be back here. But the business is United Nuclear Scientific. We sell and build lots of scientific equipment and supplies, supply it to schools, universities, the government, everybody. We also do contract work. We do R&D work, design, construct, prototype, gadgets, weird things for different companies. If they have a problem or something they're trying to solve, they'll come to me and just say, make this work. And, so we do. But the bulk of it is really just selling scientific equipment and supplies and trying to bring that back. Back when I was a kid, used to be able to go into a hobby store and buy chemicals and have a chemistry set. Now, if you see any glassware in somebody's house, you just think they're cooking up meth or something like that. So, we try to change the tide and bring back hands-on stuff into, the current generation.
That's one of the stories told about you, right? That you had a meth lab, among others.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Do you have any government contracts?
We do government contracts.
You see where that could go. People, he's working for the government, they're paying him off. He did his job, spread disinformation, now he's working for the government. You're not working for the government.
No, I don't work for the government, but if there's contracts, I bid on it. And every faction of the government doesn't know what the other one's doing. It's a complete mess.
I want to give them an idea. The question is raised. You're not a scientist. What kind of scientist are you? And I haven't been to your house in Michigan, but the last time I visited you, it was in New Mexico, and there was something built in the house, the building right behind your home. It was, as I recall, a 30-foot particle accelerator.
Yeah.
You built it.
Yeah.
What did you do with that? What do you do with your home particle accelerator that's 30 feet long?
Well, at the time, I was working on an efficient way of storing hydrogen for, automotive use, so it can be used as a fuel. And some of the most efficient hydrides, materials that absorb hydrogen like a sponge absorbs water, were restricted because they were used in thermonuclear hydrogen bombs. And so you couldn't purchase these materials, but there was kind of a loophole in the law where you could make them. So I had to make a particle accelerator to make the material to use and run tests on. So that's what that was all about.
You moved to Michigan in part because you thought that you were going to have some help from state government with the system, right? The hydrogen system.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, a lot of things changed. I mean, we moved partly because of, family reasons out there and just to get a change from the Southwest, which I regret. And, there was a lot of, at the time there were a lot of unemployed auto workers, and we thought, we can hire those, but, a lot of things happened. The recession happened, and also at the same, not at the same time, but around 2008 or something, the Chinese, who at the time were making a lot of the rare earth elements because they did it cheaply, and the U.S. mines had shut down years beforehand, decided, boy, now that, we pretty much control the market on it, we're going to go ahead and crank up the price, 10 or 100 times what it was, and it really made what we were doing impossible to do profitably. So
you know, your business is science related. You sell scientific equipment. You build things like a particle accelerator and jet car engines and things of that sort. But I think if you heard me talking earlier, you'd have to agree with a lot of people that you don't fit the mold as a typical scientist. I mean, you're not a member of any science organizations, are you?
No.
Do you write papers? You submit papers to?
I mean, not typically, not in the normal sense. I mean, you know, when I first went to Los Alamos, what was really annoying to me was the typical pompous, self-righteous scientist, you know, and they would come into town and you know, interact with the ordinary people, and you know, use terminology that was over their head just to get them to say, well, what do you mean by that? And their chest would puff up, and you know, it'd boost their ego, and it really annoyed me. So, you know, when I worked there, I relabeled some, you know, important equipment, whirligig or something along those lines, and it, you know, it really pissed them off, and you know, it was really just, to make a long story short, you know, I was the new guy coming from the West into the, you know, hardcore scientific field, and it, you know, really I was able to run circles around these guys because they followed a set path and did a set amount of things. Their support teams were very limited and weren't engaged in them because they had no idea what was going on. They never took the time to, you know, bring these guys in. But I don't know. I just looked at things from a different point of view, and I simplified things. So explaining technical matters on a simple level, and I do that a lot. And people say, "Well, boy, you don't talk like a scientist." Yeah, I'm trying to make everyone understand, you know. But and it works, you know. If you talk on a simple, basic level, everyone is going to understand what you're talking about. It's easy to talk over everybody's head, but all that does is make you look like an idiot.
You know, when I first met Bob, I remember going to his house, and there was a skull and crossbones flag flying over his house at the time. He had this giant jet car parked in the driveway. He had these videos that he shared with me that we used in one of those reports where it's a lot of machine guns. He had a lot of really interests, the kinds of interests that you don't associate with scientists. I mean, you heard my comparison to Edward Snowden. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable, but I mean, it's sort of the same vein. There was a guy who had no academic credentials. He didn't make it through high school. He took online hacking classes. He worked as a security guard. The next time they hear from him, he becomes a computer expert for CIA and NSA. I mean, it sort of fits the mold. He doesn't fit the mold in the same sense that you don't.
No, but he fits the new mold. You know, he doesn't fit the old mold, just as what we're used to seeing. But I
don't need a degree.
No. They're looking for talent. I think they learned a long time ago that they were missing a lot of creative people and people that would think outside the box. And if you really want to move forward, that's where it is.
Especially with computers.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Let's get to flying saucers. You got hired through EG&G to work for the U.S. Navy.
Yes.
Do you remember day one, first day out there?
No, first day out where?
First day out at the facility. How you
well,
the
first day was going to, you know, Area 51 proper and signing all the agreements and doing all that stuff.
Signed agreements. What kind of agreements did you sign?
It was really paperwork and going over, you know, exactly what I was going to be doing, and it was a lot of security stuff. I mean, they were questioning, you know, my family, where we had moved. It was, you know, boring, nothing.
They had investigated you. They'd been around talking to everybody you knew.
Yeah, clearly. And because I already had previous security clearance, you know, it made it a little earlier, as opposed to somebody starting from scratch, which typically takes like 13 months, from what I understand, to do a top secret or civilian Q clearance.
Did you have the clearance that you needed to work there when you started working there? Or did that?
No. I just had a convenient starting point where, you know, they didn't have to go back to the day I was born and, you know, verify that. They go, okay, well, you had clearance here, and we can go from there.
So you get on the plane in Las Vegas, a Janet plane.
Yeah, right.
Fly up there. They put you on a bus with the blacked out windows.
Oh yeah, when we were going S4, right? Yeah.
So you land at Groom Lake.
Land at 51, and then
you sign some papers.
Yeah, if you want to make it a short version, yeah, right.
You had told me the story that they started showing me these briefing books that sort of laid out the general story. Was that at Groom, or was that?
That was at S4.
That was at
no,
S4.
That material would never get north of
but people
S4.
work at Groom Lake who say, I never heard any of this stuff.
Of
I
course.
never saw any flying saucers.
There is no flying saucer stuff at 51. No, that's, look, 51 is, there's lots of people working there. It'd be hard. When I worked at S4, again, I have no idea how it is today, but, you know, back in my day at S4, there were 22 people that had clearance and knowledge of the ET material, ET crafts. That was it. We were given the list. We knew the names on the list. That was it. I still know the names on that list today. And those are some of the things that I never say anything to you about because...
Yeah, why is that?
Well, exactly. There has to be some stuff I keep to myself because you know how many times people said, yeah, hey, I worked out there with Bob and so on and so forth. Really? Who are you? What'd you do? And whatever. And it's only the stuff I said. I'm waiting for the guy that says, hey, yeah, I worked out with you and here's some of the other people on the list. Or we did this, or is it? So if I don't keep that stuff, there's nothing I have to verify if some other guy comes up to me.
You see it all the time, though, don't you? I imagine you get emails all the time, or you read stories, or you hear claims on, if you watched television, you'd hear it, that is, about people who claim they've been out there, and obviously they're making it up.
Well, I mean, the most recent was this...
Bushman?
I think it was like, yeah, like the CIA guy or something like that. Was it?
There was an anonymous guy who had a...
He was dying or he died? Yeah, and a lot of people asked me, hey, do you know? And he was apparently very supportive of me, and but I never heard of him. And what am I going to say? I've never heard of the guy and never seen him.
Back to day one. You're at Groom. You take a bus to S4 to Papoose.
Yeah, it was an old Bluebird school bus, but navy blue.
How did you know it was called S4? Did you read that on something?
No, it was just what they said.
That's what they called it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see it written down on anything?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's an S and a 4 or S-4 or SFOUR or?
No, it's a numerical 4.
Just S and 4,
yeah.
okay. And so you get to S4 and you see what? Describe what you saw.
Well, the first time we went around, it's kind of hard to describe. There's a little mountain or rise, whatever, that ends. And the first time, I have to admit, I didn't notice it. We just drove around, and I thought it was just a flat part of the mountain. At the very end is an entrance, a flat wall with doors, and that's where we parked. We went in. And that's the first time I went into the facility at all. That's where I was taken to the medical facility. That's where I was given the briefings initially, and it wasn't until the second time that I was taken down there that we stopped in the middle because the side that I thought was flat was actually hangar doors that were, you know, really cleverly blended into the side of the mountain.
To look like desert.
Yeah, great job.
When you're inside, can you see all the hangar doors, or you can only see all 9 of them, or whatever it is that from outside?
What do you mean when you're inside?
If you were inside, looking in one hangar, can you see all the way down? See all of them? See more, or is they separated?
Yeah, there's inside each hangar bay. There's, you know, if there's the big door that goes to outside, inside on the sides. I guess I could use the whiteboard.
Right.
There's, oh, what the hell? Okay. All right, this is going to be a tough one. Okay, so. You can't see it, all right. Is that making any sense? So there's the doors here where this is, you know, Papoose Lake. The main doors here roll up. However, inside there are regular doors, and on one occasion, these doors were all open. And when I came in through here on the first, well, I think it was the first time they showed me, well, there's the craft in here. These doors were all open, and you could see that there were different craft in each. So those are the doors I'm talking about.
Let's talk about the whirly gigs, or whatever you want to call them. So talk about the first time you saw one of them. Was it the
first time I saw one of them was the second time I came in. The last bay door was open. That was the sport model that was sitting in there. We pulled up, we stopped, instead of going around in the front normal entrance, we went in through, the big bay door.
Before you had seen these posters you described that were on the walls.
Yeah, the They're Here posters.
Describe what the posters
Yeah, they went through the trouble of actually making a picture of the sport model that was lifting, obviously off of Papoose Lake, because you can see the background there, and it just said "They're Here," and it was like a commercial poster. I mean, they looked like they were lithographed. I mean, they must have been printed on site. They wouldn't have done that out there. But
obviously somebody's idea of a joke.
Yeah, it was good to see that level of I don't know, lightheartedness out there.
First day you get a look at the sport model, what are you thinking to yourself? Oh my God, what are you thinking?
No, it was alien flying saucer did not enter my mind.
It was
it was exactly the opposite, that, this explains all the UFO sightings, that, we have some field propulsion technology. It has to be in this, shape or form, flying saucer type, and this is what people have been seeing for a long time, thinking that they're alien craft, and it made perfect sense to me. It's like, great, I'd really like to be part of this project, advanced propulsion. This is dynamite. So I was excited to be part of it. In fact, when we went by it, and I think I'd even mentioned to you, it had a little American flag stuck on it, and I dragged my hand across it, and it felt like cold, so I just assumed it was metal and got yelled at immediately. Don't keep your hands at your side, walk forward. All right. And
you're
so
thinking to yourself, oh man, I am part of the coolest inside joke in history, because we've got flying saucers that we'd made, and we're playing a joke on everybody. Or like,
no, I wasn't really playing a joke. It was that, this is cool technology, and by at any time we feel like we can probably just take over the world, America, and that was that attitude.
So at what point do you realize we didn't make it? How did you learn that? Is that the briefing books?
Well, yeah, the briefing books just did not make any sense. We started into, that actually, predated seeing that, and I really don't know. The briefing books covered a little bit about a lot of topics, and it dealt with, analysis of, it was all back engineering material, analysis of metal, power systems, and the way things were, even the way things were laid out within the craft. And again, it really had me confused. Going it was so far beyond what I was expecting. Is this some kind of test, or is this actual material? So it just, I thumbed through everything and went, okay, and just went on it from there. But it really didn't hit me until I went in. I was introduced to my working partner, who was Barry Castillo, or whatever I pronounce his last name. And the way they worked there was everything was very compartmentalized, so everybody had a buddy to work with. And that is the only person you can talk and converse with and bounce ideas off of. You can't talk to anybody else in any other group. You can't, even if we go sit and there's a bunch of other people around, you can only talk to the guy, your buddy, they called him. So anyway, so he was my buddy, and the first day we went in there, he was excited to show me everything, and it seemed like he had been alone for too long, and he was really excited that I was there, and I was kind of picking up on his enthusiasm, going, well, he says, boy, you are gonna just die when you see this, and one of the first things he did was fire up one of the reactor that had been taken out of the craft.
Tell that story. Tell it.
The reactor is it's a small device. It's probably just roughly a foot square with half a hemisphere on it. Half a hemisphere? A hemisphere. Anyway, there's really nothing there. The top comes off, and there's like a little tower on it. It does.
Draw it.
Well, oh, this is my eraser here.
Can you see the drawing in the back? No? Pretty tough.
No? Oh, these guys
Can.
can't. That's not fair.
You have to watch it on the screen. Was anything about this in the briefing books about how this worked? You did read about this before you got.
There's very little about this.
Okay.
Essentially, you know, for size comparison, half a basketball on a plate. That was probably
Not a whole lot of moving parts, nothing really.
no, nothing. I mean, it's just incredibly simple. There was nothing there that could do anything for, and it was too small to hold any large power source or anything.
So what did he show you?
Anyway, the top came off, and he put the top on, and then he said, "Go ahead and grab the sphere." And as my hands approached it, I couldn't touch it, which was fantastic. And if you ever played with magnets, I'm sure everybody has, you take two like poles of a magnet and you can kind of feel that balance. It was exactly like that, but it was my hands. They weren't magnetic. And he says, you're feeling a artificially produced gravitational field. And that really floored me. And, you know, I began to run through in my mind, how can this be a joke or faked, or there's no way. And that's the first time that it was kind of a domino effect than what I had read in the briefings and going, these guys aren't kidding. This is unbelievable.
Let's go back to briefings for a second, and then we'll come back and you can tell us a little bit more how this operated. In the briefing books, you see the craft described, and then you get into some more exotic stuff that you had to wonder, are they messing with your head? Alien stuff.
Yeah, there was. It was a one and only briefing, whatever you want to call it, or an overview of it. It was split. The entire program there was split into individual projects, and you know, each had an overview of each project, and each group got an overview of all the other projects in case there was some connection to what they were doing. But it was clear they didn't want everybody to know everything. And although the military loves doing that, it really screws up trying to move forward and
Too compartmentalized, you can't.
It's insane, but they really enjoy that. But anyway, the only thing that dealt with any kind of, you know, biological
entities.
Yeah, it's essentially what you'd call them. There was just a view of a creature, and the closest estimation I can give you is a gray, because it had a head with the large eyes, but what they were focusing on was a T-cut in the chest, and it was one large organ, and the comments were about how it functioned as a liver, a lungs, a heart, as if all organs had grown together or evolved together, where it was just, I don't know, an all-purpose
internal organ.
Yeah, I guess. I don't really have an analogy for it. But that was it. And they were, and the accompanying photographs were that organ removed. It was sectioned. It was showing the different chambers. There were indications of it. There were the weights of the different pieces that they removed. So, again, I don't know where the thing came from, you know, where this was just a briefing of something else, but it was,
so, you know, there's nothing in the briefing book that says this comes from X planet, and you're wondering yourself, are they messing with us, right? Are they messing with me? Are they testing
Right.
me?
I mean, well, it really didn't. It really didn't hit me at the time. It seems they wanted me up to speed really fast, to where they were skipping too many places to make me feel comfortable. You know, at the time, I didn't realize that everybody got these, and you know, the people that dealt with biological connotations of everything were getting metallurgy reports. And again, it was just in case there was some connection, you know, you could kind of raise your hand and say, wait, you know, this thing might relate to us in some way.
Did Barry or anybody else tell you why they wanted to get you up to speed so fast? Were there some urgency there, or were they just tired of not making progress, or what was it?
That was never really clear. I know there was some accident prior to me being hired, and
you replaced somebody who?
Yeah, I replaced somebody. Somebody was killed, and it was playing with the reactor. And you know, they said, "Well, we're going to be working on the reactor." I went, "Well, you know," but so yeah, there was obviously a lot of caution being taken. But from what Barry said and what Dennis said, who was my immediate supervisor, was that, you know, they were trying to make leaps and bounds way too fast, and you know, I was certainly not planning on doing anything like that, especially hearing the news of that.
Were you thinking to yourself, I shouldn't be here? Why have they got me here?
Yeah. Please, there's a billion people they could have hired, that I thought would have been, a better choice for that. But they really wanted somebody. It seems like they were stuck. And they wanted somebody coming from left field with just new ideas, just to get us out of the rut and just move something forward.
Man, well, they get the right guy, the mayor of left field.
I don't know if that's the way to describe it.
Let's go back to talk about the reactor. So he showed you with this experiment in your hands, you could feel it's a force field, and how they fake that, if they were faking it, is amazing.
No, I don't think you can.
Then you saw some other stuff, the golf ball demonstration. Tell me that story. Tell us that.
Well, that wasn't really supposed to be a demonstration, but... well, in some way it was, and once I said that's unreal. This is a gravitational field, and you can see that it's extremely strong by it, and it tapers off, and it's following the inverse square law, which is the gravity, radiation. The inverse square law is essentially the amount of energy dissipates really quickly as distance increases. So, that was immediately noticeable to me. And he said, well, check this out. And, he had a golf ball and he, winged it at the thing, and it bounced off the field coming nowhere close to the reactor. And, we have those suspended ceiling tiles in there, and it knocked it out of place. And, he flipped out and said, Dennis is going to be back in here, so jump up on there. We're trying to arrange stuff and, fix the thing. And he's knocking the reactor around and going, oh, man, it's my first day, don't screw everything up. So, and I'm taking the dust off the thing, and the second we finished, Dennis walks inside and is, how things going? Great, so it was something.
I'll say, it's day one. You've read this interesting briefings. You don't know quite what's going on. You do see this technology. It's damned amazing. What is your job? What do they tell you you're supposed to do?
The bottom job is not to figure out how this thing works or, let us know what this is. Just, can we make another one of these? So just let us know if you can.
Can we duplicate the
can
technology?
we duplicate it? Like it doesn't have to be exact, but find out how this thing works. If we need to make something that's bigger or do it but we want more of these things, and just do it right now. So that was it.
And the answer is, can we? Can we?
No.
No.
No. No. No, we're just not even in the same ballpark.
Is it because of materials, or we just don't understand how it works?
It's both. Look, this is like dropping off an iPhone in the wagon train days and say, we're going to need more of these.
Did you ask anybody, hey, where do we get these? Where did these come from?
No, I really did. There was so much other stuff that was flooding my brain that was just amazing, and I was so excited to be there. I didn't care where the thing came from. It was beginning to trickle into my mind. Boy, this is maybe what flying saucer crashed in South Africa or something, and we got it, and we're taking it apart. This is great. You
eventually saw all of them, or you saw glimpses?
Well, when I looked through the doors, I could see.
As far as you could tell, they didn't look like they'd been in a crash. Right?
Well, there's one. There's one. And I mentioned this to you a long time ago, and I never added this one thing, which I'll add now. There was one, like I said, that had been shot with a projectile, and I know for a fact it came out of the water. That's all I know.
You know it for a fact because that's what you were told?
Yeah, that it came out of the
water.
A
great big projectile, like a howitzer shell or something, right?
It was about, it's hard to judge from distances, like from here to the exit sign, how big is that? But I'm guessing it was, maybe a 9-inch diameter hole.
The sport model, no dents, no scrapes?
No, it looked like it came right out of the showroom.
And it looked like the Billy Meyer beam ship?
Yeah, from the pictures I've seen of the Billy Meyer one, which, it looked fake to me, but no, there it is.
I'm sure the Billy Meyer people are happy about that, but there's a lot of people don't take that case seriously, and
It's either
is
the
what it
most
is.
amazing coincidence on the face of the earth, or something really did happen to that guy, Billy Meyer.
So the sport model, you called it. You had names for all of them.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Give me some other names.
Well, there's one that looked like the top hat, and one was obviously a Jello mold, and but they were just silly names because we were talking about him, and they're talking about Bird 6, and I'm like, what's that? Is that the Jello looking thing? So I gave them my names, and they stuck with them like they did at Los Alamos.
So the sport model, you got to know that one pretty well, though. You got to see.
Yeah, it's the only one I can
Hands-on.
say hands-on, I touched, I walked in, that I can say. For all the other ones could have been holographic projections to fool me, but this is the only one I know is real.
Before we talk about the test, one other thing about the reactor, and I want you to use this example to sort of explain how it worked. You had told me a story about a candle and flame that was basically frozen. Tell me that story and why it gives us an indication of how this thing operated, what power it had.
Well, when we had, after the golf ball incident, there was the benches we had set up. The reactor was not the only thing in the craft. The reactor sits in the center. On the level underneath, there are, I should say the reactor, surrounded by the reactor, there are 3 gravity amplifiers, as they were called. Directly under those, there are emitters, which are, probably like 55-gallon drums. There are 3 of them. They hang directly under the emitters, and apparently the way the device works, is the reactor supplies the base gravitational wave and power to the amplifiers, which channel it down to the emitters, which propel the craft. So, in addition to the reactor that was out of the craft, one of the emitters was also on the bench. Now, I don't know which craft this came out of. It was not out of the sport model, but they had the reactor operating and the emitter, and Barry had taken a candle and put it about, I'd say about 2 feet from the end of the emitter and lit the candle. And he fired up the reactor, and he said, go check out the candle. And the flame was there, but it wasn't moving. It was like a picture of it. It was just frozen. And now that makes you think of a lot of things. Oh boy, we know gravity and time are interrelated, and one is essentially the other. And fine, if it stopped or slowed time down there, how are photons still being emitted so we can see the light? It should just go black. There are a lot of things made absolutely no sense whatsoever with the science we're familiar with. But these were just things he was showing me as a demonstration that properties and what it's doing that are just so far beyond what we even know what's going on. And this had nothing to do with the work. I mean, we're just supposed to make another one of these things somehow. So,
So help us understand what this technology means, how advanced it is. It becomes obvious at some point it's from somewhere else. We didn't make it because we're taking it apart to figure out how it works.
Look, a machine that makes gravity is the most important thing that mankind could probably create. Look, we have electromagnets that make magnetic fields. We can make electric fields, with Van de Graaff generators and, God knows what else. But, to make a gravitational field is like the last piece of a missing pie. Because when you can, right now the only thing that makes gravity, as far as we know, is mass. You just need a bunch of stuff, and it's a property of mass that it just magically pulls in things. We observe gravity, we see what it does, but we really don't know what it is. We can throw some equations together and say, well, it works like this, but we really don't know what's behind it. But if you can make a machine that on demand makes gravity, all the stuff we write science fiction about stops becoming science fiction that afternoon. Then force fields become a reality. You can shift time. I mean, everything becomes possible. It's the most important thing, and here is an operating machine sitting in front of us that makes gravity, and do we really want to be able to make one of those things? I mean, you could make impenetrable fields. You can have propulsion that is mind-boggling as the crafts operate.
It would be the ultimate weapon.
Well, not just the ultimate weapon, but it would really be the ultimate thing. It would catapult mankind forward. And what really sucks is the military is in control of this.
I should, I neglected to mention this during my presentation, but Bob and I have talked about it before. A guy named Ben Rich, who Jim Goodall knows and interviewed several times. Ben Rich was the head of the Skunk Works, which they operated things at Groom Lake, and had been there. They developed the U-2 and SR-71 and Stealth. If anybody would know about advanced technology, it's him and Kelly Johnson. So a lot of people have speculated whether Ben Rich and those guys had incorporated alien technology into some of the advanced airframes that we've got. And I even had a chance to ask him on the day that the Stealth was unveiled out there at Nellis whether any alien stuff was in there. He said no. But other people have talked to him. Jan Harzand, who's here from MUFON, heard a speech that Ben Rich gave at UCLA in which he basically said, we now have the technology to take ET home. We had the calculations slightly wrong, but we can do anything you can imagine. We can travel to the stars. But, he said, the technology is locked up in black budgets and black programs and will never see the light of day. What do you think about that?
Well,
it's sort of like the same thing you're saying.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like what I'm saying. You know, I hope that's not the case, but I mean, how do you pry it out of there? It really, there should be a lot more people working on this. A lot more people.
Well, that's sort of why you became disenchanted with it, but we'll come back to that. Let's talk about the sport model a little bit. You got to see it fly. You got to see it test.
Yeah, once. Once close up. Barry and I were in the lab. We were working. Dennis came in and he said, there's a test flight going on. Bob, why don't you come out here? Barry, you can tag along too. And that's when we came in, you know, side door into the hangar. The craft was already out onto the dry lake bed in front of, or the lake bed proper, but it was out in front of the door. And probably about 2 minutes after I got there, the craft just began to silently lift off the ground. And there was a guy between where I was standing and the door that had a small desk, and there was some sort of transmitter on it, and he was just on a microphone talking apparently to somebody in the craft. And at the time, that again immediately set up a red flag in my mind going, that's not supposed to work either. There is a craft being powered and surrounded by an intense gravitational field. How are the radio waves getting into this thing? It just didn't make sense. But again, very few things did there, and I didn't have much of an opportunity to connect all the dots. But it lifted off the ground silently. There was an obvious high voltage corona discharge. It was beginning to get a little late, but you could see the purple-blue glow. But as soon as it lifted off, you know, 6-10 feet, that dissipated, and it just moved around and sat back down where it was. But it doesn't sound like much, but it was incredibly impressive. There wasn't a sound other than a little hiss when it first took off. But you know, it's a big device. It moved around and sat down, and I mean, I was beaming. It was so cool.
You didn't get to see, it didn't fly off to Venus or anything, and people.
No. This is their prize catch here. I mean, no one is going out there and taking it out of the atmosphere and risking it. I mean, it was a big deal.
But you know, like it could have.
I'm sure. I don't know if they knew how to get it into that mode, but you know, like the test flight data that I saw, they even were very careful on what days to take it above the mountain range where traffic was at its lowest in the surrounding area. So they were very concerned about who could see what and you know how much they risked the thing moving around. But it was quite a prized possession of theirs.
So you saw the reactor up close, and you saw the craft inside. Not only the test, but you got in it.
Yeah. Later on, it was. Again, you know, we have to look at everything. We're trying to figure out how this device works from nothing. So and it's technology, you know, we can barely grasp. So, you know, obviously the placement, orientation of the components and subcomponents might be critical to the operation of it. So I was let in one time. There were several other technicians in there doing their own thing. I don't know what they were working on, but we wanted to see where the reactor was, how it, you know, how it was positioned, you know, where the amplifiers were. And this is when, you know, I described to you there was access to a lower level to where the emitters were, which was a small hexagon-shaped area that had what I thought was a really creative, collapsible doorway. And I guess the only analogy is if you take a 6-pack of beer that comes in bottles and you take out the little divider there, if you stand it up by itself, it's really strong. It'll hold a lot of weight, but you can easily collapse it flat by the side. This is essentially a metal version of that, and it was a hexagon shape with a little hole, and you can walk on it, but you can just put your finger in the hole and pop it, and the whole thing snaps over to where you have a hole you can kind of stick your head upside down in, which is what I did. I just leaned in there, and they wanted me to see how specifically how the arms that held the emitters connected to the bottoms of the amplifiers, and those in themselves were fantastic technology.
Describe the interior, what it looks like.
It's very, very bland. If I, again, was to give you an analogy, I would say it was if you put all these components in there, pretended everything was made out of wax, heated up for a bit and let it cool off. There was never a sharp angle anywhere. Anytime something sat somewhere perpendicular to it, it had a radius of curvature to it. Everything had a smooth curve everywhere. It was all one color.
Was it all one piece?
It looks like it was one giant inject and molded thing, but there was not a seam, there was not a rivet, there was not a fastener. It was just all there.
Any buttons? No place to put in the key?
No, and there's no wiring.
You mentioned about, I'll use the term, furniture, because we both got a lot of grief.
Furniture, yeah. Well, that was because this was, I think, the first interview on TV, and I was frightened for a couple of reasons. First of all, I wasn't supposed to be saying anything, and the fact that it was on TV, and I didn't know what kind of big mistake this was. And so you asked me what was inside or describe, and I was trying to think of the word seats, and I couldn't in a million years get that out of my mind, and all I could say is there's furniture in there. And I know it sounded ridiculous, and everybody said, well, that guy can't be a scientist. He doesn't even know what the word seat is in. You know, it's just stress does that to you.
It was the size of it, though. It was small.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Furniture. Well, yeah, that's quite a critical point. Everything was very small. It looked like, well, maybe that's where it popped into my mind, because I was thinking of, the children's, furniture set or tea sets you get for little kids that have, the little molded chairs and little tiny, but that's exactly what it looked like. It looked like a little furniture set for kids. So, and obviously it was uncomfortable to walk around in. When you first come in the side, you have to hunch over. The only place you can stand up comfortably is, right by the reactor in the side. So whatever built or used the thing was obviously smaller than my stature.
I'll come back to the term the kids a little bit later. So somebody did the test. Somebody was in it. They must have figured out a little bit of how it operates.
Yeah, obviously. And in the sport model, the one that I went in, they removed one of the amplifiers, which was really shocking to me. Now, the reactor and emitter, all those were in that one. So that must have come from another craft, which made me at least partially to believe that these all may have the same power systems in them, which, really makes you think that's...
So the one you had in the lab that you were working with,
yeah, the components had to come from somewhere else.
Same one that was in the sport model.
Yeah, but wasn't the sport models. So you can extrapolate and say
They all like them.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Chevy. They all have the same kind of engine and they're different, but I don't know. It's all conjecture.
Let's talk about the fuel. It's a big, it's an interesting part of the story and a bone of contention for a lot of folks. Element 115. How did you know it was 115? Describe its properties.
Describe its properties.
Why, what does it do? Why is it so miraculous?
Well, let me put it this way. We weren't given the task to say, analyze the fuel, find out what it is, and, they just, again, the thing was, and there was a lot of push to it, was to, what is that, and do we have any? And, that's it. And these guys really do talk and think like that. It's just, what did you guys do today? We just looked at this the other day. But, if you remove the top of the reactor, there's a little tower in there with a cap, and there's a triangular piece of fuel in there, what we called the fuel, because if you put that in, everything starts to work. We analyzed what was there. Now, somehow, again, we didn't have access to all the information, but somehow Los Alamos had something to do with either keeping or storing the fuel. Now, we did all kinds of tests on it, not just us. We had to send, all that equipment isn't there. We don't have, all kinds of interesting spectrographs. But we had it tested, and we just wanted to see where this was on the periodic chart, what kind of peaks we get off of it, and, maybe it's just, a unique fuel, maybe it's just some a blend of a nuclear material. But when it became obvious that this isn't even on our usable periodic chart, that's essentially where we stopped, and said we weren't going to analyze the material and see if we could make it. We just wanted to know if it was something that we could possibly use, and it wasn't.
You told me that we couldn't make it. Why couldn't we make it?
Well, just like any heavy element, or super heavy element more specifically, the only naturally occurring heavy elements, uranium. I mean, as soon as you get anything heavier than that, a larger number of protons, you have to make artificially. And that's a difficult job, because you either, like to make plutonium, which our country loves, you have to take other materials, put them in a reactor, let it run for a couple of years, and then you can, in the case of plutonium, you can chemically separate out, the small quantity of that. Now, even heavier elements, there's more difficulty obtaining. Extremely heavy ones, like 110, you have to make that on an atom-by-atom basis, an accelerator, where you're, accelerating single atoms or beams of other atoms, near the speed of light, smacking them together, and it doesn't make a usable quantity. You may get the interaction you want, and it flies off and hits a detector, at a fraction of the speed of light, and you go, that was 115. And, that's when they say, we synthesize 115, that's what it is. It's not like a cup pops out and we've got some, It's just, a particle comes flying out, and we go, well, at these angles, at this magnetic moment, at that speed, it will be 115. And if you get a peek at that, boom, it comes off. It's a little display on a thing, and right, we made 115. But, to actually make usable quantities, forget it. It would take, the entire resources of a country forever, to get a gram or so.
How much was up there?
Well, they say there was 500 pounds of the material. Now, was that recovered in a craft? Was that separate? They certainly didn't synthesize it, but, where it came from, I have no idea. But again, Los Alamos had something to do with it, because they renamed it LA 1000. I know there are shipments back and forth there, but I think it had to be, from what I understand, it had to, if you assume a cylinder of this material, it has to be machined into a cone, and that cone sliced, it has to be stacked first, like a bunch of quarters stacked on top of one another, then machined into a cone, and then sliced to be usable in the reactor. Now, all of that had to do with the metallurgical guys, and we weren't even allowed to know why, but I knew that was necessary for whatever it's worth.
Reactor doesn't work without 115. Did you ever do an experiment to try some other kind of fuel?
No, no.
Okay.
I mean, quite honestly, we really didn't know what was going on there. I mean, we had a basic idea of, at least we thought. Again, we just had to report to what was going on, so it's not like you can ever say, you know, we really don't know. We've been working on this 2 weeks. You better come up with something. So it's, you know, look, we think it's an accelerator, and you know, we've identified that that's, you know, 114, 115, 160. It looks like it's 115. It's an element, and you have to explain this stuff to guys that absolutely have minimal scientific background, and just try that when you're dealing with stuff that's not even, you know, from the Earth.
So how does it work? I mean, how does it work? What you learned, you get a piece of it, a triangle. It's in, and how does it? Function?
Really, you just put the. I wish I had that model that.
It's in my car.
Show me. Is it really? Okay. You just put the fuel in there. There's a little cap that sits on top. And then as soon as you put, yet nothing happens, but as soon as you put the lid on, it turns on. There's no on switch. Yeah, it's just, it's like it attains resonance or something. It just is on. Which makes you wonder, how does it work in the craft? Because no one's taken the lid off, because in the craft, it sits on the ground and there's a conduit that sits over it and goes to the top of the craft. So, but it's not clear how anything works in the craft.
And it generates gravity.
Oh yeah, yeah. It generates its own artificial gravitational field, and that lifts the craft off the ground.
We've had conversations in private about how this accounts for some UFO cases. I mean, it in effect achieves invisibility in a sense. You can be saying right.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because light, it will bend it around there, and sorry, I didn't leave that. I left out that pretty important observation. When the craft was up, I mean, you could walk underneath and look straight up, and you can't see the craft until you step to the side, and it becomes visible again. It's quite amazing, you know. So it bends light, just like you know, you could see on a hot roadway in the summertime how heat would affect that coming off of you know. But here you're in a much more controlled situation, and the shape of the gravitational field, the artificial field around the craft, if you look at that and then we're able to stand at different vantage points, you can just look around it. Now, this isn't something new. We know this from, you know, looking at faraway stars. They call it gravitational lensing, where a star might be over here, but because we're looking around another star, it bends light, and, you know, but here again, here is an artificial source, a machine that does this, and that's everything. But yeah, like I said, all the science fiction things become reality. There's your invisibility cloak, there's your, you know, impenetrable force field, here's your field propulsion system, and, you know, here's you're even beginning to tamper with, you know, potential time travel.
It occurs to you, hey, this could work not only in space but underwater. Maybe that's why the Navy's interested in running the program. I mean, it's odd, isn't it, that it's the U.S. Navy running the program out there?
You know, that never occurred to me. No, I swear to this, I never even thought about that thing operating underwater.
It would work just fine, though, wouldn't it?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't understand why it wouldn't, but it'd be interesting to see what the water does.
You had said, I remember, I could barely get my pointy little head around it when we were first talking about this, but that if somebody had one of these and were out in space and wanted to come to Earth, in essence, they're not propelling themselves toward Earth. It works differently, right?
Yeah. In fact, the two modes that the craft operated on are, they label Delta and Omicron configuration. Delta meaning using all three amplifiers, and Omicron obviously meaning just one. And the way the craft would work is, let me get rid of my reactor here. Now I'm going to draw a really bad flying saucer here. All right, so normally you would have the three amplifiers hanging, or the three emitters hanging down in Omicron mode. A single one would swing sideways, and you would have the other two sitting like that. Now, what happens is the two that are facing straight down essentially act like a pedestal where they just keep the craft steady. The one swung out to the side creates a gravitational distortion off the edge. And these, in Omicron configuration, these things really fly unstable. They do not look like any sort of high-tech technology. To give you an example, if you put a bowling ball in the middle of your bed and 2 feet away you take your fist and you push it down, the bowling ball rolls towards it. And that's exactly how the craft operates. It focuses a single emitter and creates a gravity distortion, essentially a divot in space-time, and the craft rolls forward, in the distortion. So that's basically how the thing moves around. So, and this is opposed to our conventional propulsion, whether you're using, a jet, a rocket, a propeller. We always take something and accelerate it out the back using the action-reaction principle and, push forward. And these guys are doing it exactly opposite. They're creating a distortion in front and sucking towards it.
When element 115, of course, when you're talking about this stuff, it did not exist. We're still years away from it. But you had told me in that first interview, look, we believed that there was an island of stability somewhere, 115, 116, somewhere in there, and maybe someday we'll be able to make it. It didn't exist then, but they've made it since. Tiny little piece, as you said. When that news comes out, some people said, aha, Bob was right. Others people say, aha, Bob was wrong, because this isn't 115 at all. It doesn't behave anything like what you said. There's not 500 pounds of it, that's for sure. So,
there's not 500 pounds of it.
I mean, like they had up there. We couldn't make 500 pounds of it.
No, obviously not. And, well, look, you're talking about physical quantities and also, atom quantities from fabricating it. But, the island of stability isn't something that we came up with. I mean, that's been theorized since probably the 50s, that it just looks like in the, physical makeup or just the geometric stacking, I guess, of protons and neutrons. It's certain combinations, they're stable, and other combinations, they're not. Well, it looked like further up in the periodic chart, boy, if we have ever had anything with 115 protons or something in that range, it looks like that might become stable. And, that was actually in our minds when we were trying to identify it. I said, boy, this thing is off the charts. Are we looking at the island of stability? And I'm beginning to get lost here.
Well, I was asking
where are we
about
going with this?
The 114 that was synthesized.
Oh, yeah, so the 115. Again, I think what did they whack together? Calcium and, I don't know, bismuth or something like that. But they did a unique collision and accelerators, and they made, a few atoms of it, and they went, this is, 115. And it decayed. Now, obviously, this is a stable material. But
a different isotope.
Yeah, it's like I said, there's, we have hydrogen that's, 1 on the periodic chart, just like 115 is 115. It has 1 proton, 115 has 115 protons. Well, there's hydrogen, which is protium, which we're all familiar with, hydrogen gas. It's flammable, it's stable, it doesn't, decay. But there's, 2 other isotopes of hydrogen. There's still hydrogen, there's still element 1, and, one we call deuterium, has 2 protons. It's also stable, but it's different. It's heavier. And there's another one called tritium, which is radioactive, and it decays. About half-life about 12 and a half years. Again, they're different isotopes. They have different numbers of neutrons. They have the same amount of protons, so it's the same thing. No doubt 115 has, God knows how many isotopes. We know at least 1 is stable. There's probably several that are unstable, and again, if they keep playing around with it, and I don't see why they wouldn't, I'm sure they're going to find a stable isotope. And
the whole idea of anti-gravity propulsion we've heard it from scientists. That guy Lazar doesn't know what he's talking about. That's impossible. It violates this. It violates that. You've heard that. You've dealt with it. I mean,
yeah, I was one of the guys that say it violates this and
you
violates
would have said
that.
that before, yeah.
Yeah.
And you would have said things about UFO people. This can't be. I mean, you were pretty dismissive about.
Right, which is the way I shouldn't be, you know. And I give a lot of people, you know, crap about that too, because, you know, look, if you're gonna work in a scientific field, you're gonna be a scientist, and, you know, in any capacity, the most important thing is to keep an open mind, because, you know, look, back in time, they said, you know, 30 miles an hour is the fastest a human body can possibly take, and that was written as a scientific fact. I mean, that's what scientists believed then, and they all agreed on it. And, you know, how many other things are we, you know, they said, this is the way it is. You cannot do that. You know, you have to keep an open mind. Look, flying saucers, I used to laugh at John Lear and have a good time of it. I still do, but that's a different story. But, you know, but I have to give him credit. You know, he was talking about, you know, they have flying saucers up at Area 51. Really, John? You know, I just be an adult now. But, you know, there's a lot. And as far as the technology, yeah, it violates a lot of what we know, which concerns me, because some of the things we know are laws. And the reason we call them laws and not theories is because they've been verified time and time again, you know, with experimental proof, and, you know, that's supposed to be cast in stone. So you don't want to see anything that violates the law.
Do you see any aliens up there? I know several of the people who submitted questions wanted to ask about aliens. I mean, you did see,
you know,
the
this came from, yeah, now the diagram, you want to call that seeing an alien. The only other time, and I know it's because this one incident I told, that one time I was being led in and dragged my hand across the craft. We went in that door, there's a corridor to the right, and you immediately turn to go to the labs. Well, as you turn to the right, there's a door, and it has a small, you know, window on it that has the little wires running through it. I peeked in there as we turned the corner, and that's when I saw, I've told you this before, there were two guys there and a little tiny thing that they were looking down at. You know, and I just walked by, told to keep my eyes forward, and, you know, I think I told Gene that and a couple other people, and they said, well, you probably saw, well, not that Gene said that, but, you know, well, you probably saw an alien or whatever. I don't think that was the case. I think even to this day, I think they had a little doll or something, because they were trying to find out, you know, whatever size creature would fit in the craft, and, you know, they were.
Do you recognize the term the kids? Did you ever hear the term the kids?
Yeah.
And that's referring to?
The creatures that ran the craft.
So they called them the kids wherever these craft came from. But you never got an answer how we got them? Or
no, that was just incidental talking that, you know, had nothing to do with me.
You know, you've heard all the stuff over the years. Of those who don't believe your story, they believe you're either making it up or it's disinformation, that you're working for them out there that's spreading the story. So you're making it up?
No, sorry.
Could you make it up?
No, really? No, I'm sorry. That's way too much for me to handle. No, really, I don't. And I know, look, a lot of people are into, you know, UFO stuff, and I just kind of exploded onto the scene and said, hey, I don't follow UFOs, I don't follow reports, I don't know who's researching what, I don't know the names of people involved, and but on the other hand, you know, I know people make their living doing this sort of thing. And, you know, if I just pop in one day and say, hey, this happened to me, I did this and this and this, but, you know, I'm out, I'm not part of this, I can understand how that can interfere with their, you know, income stream or their belief system or whatever, and they need to attack me, but look, what I said happened, absolutely happened, period. That's it. Thank you.
You know, I've been speaking about you for a long time. A couple times a year I'll explain the story from my perspective and defend you, because it deserves to be defended, and I believe the story as it's been told. But, you know, you go out there and you hear all kinds of crazy theories about what you're doing and who you work for and everything, and there are those who have a lot of trouble with it.
I can understand that. Look, if the tables were reversed, I honestly could not say I would believe my story. Look, there's not enough, I can't provide enough information, and in some cases won't, to, to back up my story. And, if the tables are reversed, I have to take that other side and go, look, guy, unless you can, provide more proof, I just can't say that, I'm behind it, and I have to agree with that.
So why did things go south for you? It seems like a scientist's dream to work on a program like this. Why in the world would you walk away from that or tell anybody else about it? Were you picked because they figured you would tell somebody about it?
No. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Well?
What happened was, it was kind of more of a personal nature between my wife and I at that time. Now, it's not like I had a 9-to-5 job and they said, come out at these hours. It was really a sketchy setup that they would call me. The place at EG&G by the airport, what was that?
It was on Sunset Road over, yeah.
I think it was called something, I can't remember. Anyway, they would call me and say, it's now 8:45. By 9:15, we expect you to be, at the building and board the craft and, the airplane, not the craft. Yeah. So, and it would be at a moment's notice like that. Well, and look, I was so really thrilled to be part of this project. I was keeping with the whole program. Like, I couldn't talk to my wife. I said, look, I'm working at the test site there. It's on secret nuclear stuff, and that's it. But again, I get calls in the middle of the night. She can't hear who they are. And I said, I got to go, it's work. You have to go to work at 8 o'clock at night and you may not be back, until the middle of the night or the morning. I said, yeah, that's just the way it goes. And that happens, time and time again. And, if the phone picks up and, my wife picks it up, they hang up, and, so then they call back, I pick up the phone, yeah, it's Bob here, and, yeah, okay, 2 hours, I'll be there. Well, after a while, that seems like something else. In fact, maybe not after a while, but pretty quick. And, it's something I could laugh at now, but it was not funny then. And, I kept with the program, never said anything to her, and, she thought I was having an affair. And, as time went on, going back and forth, she really didn't have a job or anything to do, so I started, since I was making money from here now, I got her flying lessons down at McCarran Airport, and to give her something, to do. And anyway, she started having an affair with the flight instructor. So, I had no knowledge of this, but, part of the requirements of the project and the security requirements really were to have my phone monitored. Now, I'm going back and forth to work, and now they are listening to this affair progress on the phone that I know nothing about. And, one of the main things is that you be, mentally and physically stable. And they're really concerned about that. So it reached a point one day where they didn't call. And they were kind of in a quandary at that point going, what are we going to do with Lazar? We got to see either this, affair fizzles out or they break up or whatever. So, I just stopped coming in. I stopped getting calls. I called Dennis. I don't get return calls. And, days are going by and, now Tracy's going back and forth and flying and doing stuff. She's busy all the time because, she's got a boyfriend. And, I'm beginning to get really concerned. I mean, these guys are so over the top with security and, we want to know everybody that knows this material. We want to know where they are 24 hours a day, so on and so forth. And so they're not even calling me. What's going on? And so I started getting concerned, and it reached a point where I don't know where the breaking point was, but I'm pretty sure it was Gene Huff, the first, guy that, I talked to, and and said, kind of spilled my guts. Hey, look, this is what I've been doing out there, and told Tracy too, and.
Hey, let's go see him.
Yeah, well, I also had, man, we're skipping over lots of stuff, but I had, there were, charts of the test flight days and which days that they were going to go over the mountain and do what they call high performance test. So those days, statistically, on that highway they went by, the lowest number of travelers was on a Wednesday night. So Wednesday night, I think 8 o'clock was like the test night. So I knew how long they were going to be in the air. I know all that stuff just from memory. So I told these guys, I said, this is going to be an unbelievable story, but this is what I've been doing. I can go out there and show you guys, but I'm starting to get concerned that they don't like me anymore for some reason, and I'm just going to disappear. So I just want somebody else to see what I had done in case I'm just gone one day, and at least you guys have a story. So we go out there, take everybody, and the story. We go out. It's 8 o'clock. Everything happens like I said, and it lands. And then now it finally hits Tracy. Oh my God, he wasn't having an affair, and so she breaks off the affair. And it is just a giant mess.
It's embarrassing to bring this stuff up, but I mean, it is the human side of this story that people. But the other human side, as I alluded to it in my talk, is that there's stuff that happened to you in that period after they caught you. The third time they went out, they got caught, and so they want to talk to you, and they're very upset. Dennis, in particular, the guy.
Oh yeah.
So they want to talk to you, and then a whole series of really bad things start happening. Share with us a little bit about what that period was like, because it's hard to convey it, and that it was really going on, but it was real.
Yeah, it was well, I guess it started when we got caught. When we got caught that time. I can't quite remember which time that happened, but we had gone out again with the test flight data 2 times. And been there on Wednesday nights, and Gene Huff, and we had an ever-increasing amount of people that we began to trust to go out there, and which was getting really ridiculous. I think we even brought a motor home out there, and we're parked out on the road because
nothing.
No, once you start getting away with something, you get a little cocky and thinking, boy, they can't see us. And so we're out there, and Gene and I kind of joke around sometimes and say stupid stuff, pretending that someone's out there listening. So we're sitting out there on the dirt road. The test flight time is coming up. We're sitting, leaning on the front of the car, and Gene says something to the effect is, well, I hope out there they don't realize that we've got those other 150 team members out back with, automatic weapons and everything, and they're getting ready to storm the base. And I said, they can't possibly know about all those guys, And so right after we said that, now it's pitch black, you can't see your hand in front of your face. Not 50 feet in front of us, you saw a little green thing fall on the ground and roll to us. And they're both sitting there, what? And as it turned out, there were a whole bunch of guys standing there in the dark watching us through night vision scopes, and after I said that, a guy dropped one and it rolled over to us. So they turn on, turn on the lights. Okay, everybody come with us, and that.
And I had told the story about the break-in the car. I mean, I remember going to your house after a break-in. And you had the Uzi out, and you're ready to shoot somebody, and then the break-in at the car at the gym. That stuff really happened. It was really going on.
Oh yeah, that was with Mario, the guy who's a truck driver now. He was going to, we were just working out at a local gym near us, and I was at this was at probably the highest paranoia stage, and I had an Uzi in the front, and Mario and I got to the place, and I said, okay, if it's loaded here, we're safe to go outside. And we open the car doors, we close them, and we may even make a joke about it. We lock the doors, we try and open them. Okay, the car's secure. We go in there and joking, you think we'll be safe for half an hour? And yeah, I think we can do it. And we come walking out, there's all the doors, the trunk's open, the Uzi's laying out there, and my wallet, and we just looked at each other. This is impossible, But yeah, that happened. Mario tells that story probably every day.
You, at some point, you decided to talk to me. We did that interview in Silhouette.
I can't quite remember how that happened. There was just too much going on. But yeah, I know at some point, and that was really, again, Lear was making a big deal. He started naming off the people that he knew that suddenly disappeared, and he said, unless you talk to this guy, George Knapp, and if you go out on the air, they'll be afraid to talk to you. I said, John, they're not afraid to do anything, but I called you anyway, or he did.
And then it kind of hits the fan. They're really mad at him, and then that's when a lot of really bad stuff started happening. And then we decided to record an interview just for safekeeping in case something happened to him. So it was a couple of hours on tape, and under the condition that I wouldn't use that until Bob said okay. And it was 8 months. 8 months until we got the okay, and I worked on him every day to talk him into allowing me to use it and tell the story, assuming he was still alive. And on the day that we were ready to broadcast it, it was part 6 of a 9-part report. Bob suddenly changes his mind and grabs the videotape.
Well, because you were going to say who I was, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting ready to identify him. We're 10 minutes from going on the air. We're wrestling over the tape. He didn't. As a UFO profiteer and messiah coming forward and making up stories, he was a very reluctant witness, I can tell you. You regret it? I mean, we heard a little bit of it. At times, you certainly regret it. It's certainly has changed your life. I mean, it's changed you.
Yeah, it has.
It's not good. This is not
No,
good.
I mean, that's what's kind of entertaining to me. People, they come, oh, you made up some story. I bet you're making all kinds of money. I'm like, where? I want my cut. But no, to be honest, I did have the opportunity. I mean, New Line Studios in Columbia, when they heard all this, I mean, the president of Columbia Pictures came down and, you were there, right? Yeah. And he said, we're doing this, and and they started giving me screenplays, and no, it was a James Bond movie. They had me running over the tops of cars. It's like look, either you tell the story how it happened, or leave me out and just make up a UFO story. But you can't. It has to be exactly what happened. And so it was just constantly everything being turned down. And it's like, you know what? We're not doing it.
I had mentioned before about me going out and doing presentations about you, and one of the things I always said is that, look, Bob doesn't show up at UFO events. He's not cashing in on it. There's nothing wrong with those who do. If you can make some money at it, more power to you, because it fuels the research. But you've never done that before. That's not the case anymore. Why did you decide to come here?
Well, I really didn't. You
are here.
Yeah, I know, I'm here, but now I know a lot of people mentioned, look, there's this big UFO, and I've never been to a UFO convention. I mean, I thought they were like Star Trek conventions, people walking around with antennas and stuff. But, I didn't want to have any part of that, and, the people that arranged this, and no, this is a class thing, just come down, it's 25 years, once in your life, just say something, and well, everything I've said has already been said either on the internet, and why would anyone even care to just hear it again? So I finally just said, okay, fine, just to stop you from hassling me. Well, but wait. But it really didn't end there, and that was just a moment of weakness. And then and one of the reasons why was because it was like 2 or 3 months away. So I just, February, fine, whatever you want to do, and then anyway, a few weeks went by, and it kind of hit me that one day that date's going to come around, and I was more than that. Maybe it was. 3 or 4 weeks or something like that. So anyway, I called them back here and I said, no, I'm really thinking about not doing that, and I'm sorry. And I told my wife and George, and and I really didn't realize there were this many people that were interested, and they said, you can't back out. We've been advertising. There's going to be a lot of people here, and and I said, you've got 15 or 50 speakers or something. It's just one less that's going to be here. But
seriously, you don't recognize, you don't understand that people are so interested in seeing you and hearing from you. It doesn't register?
Well, no, but I appreciate that. I do. But I mean, and that, they made that clear. Aside from the fact that they'd sue me if I didn't. So, I said
in a nice way.
Yeah.
In a nice way.
So I will go. So I am here.
Well, the fact that you said that you would do it because I keep pestering you, I take that as a
no, and also I did, I did give him my word. I do it, and it's not like I'm, it's too bad.
It's cool, and then I told you it'd be great. It'd be cool.
Well, no problem.
When you heard the presentation about how far this story has traveled, how many industries and businesses it has launched. The extraterrestrial highway, that's from you. Las Vegas 51's baseball team.
Yeah, boy, people jumped capitalizing on it really, really quickly.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, when you see Area 51 mentioned in movies, in some Tom Hanks movie, or Independence Day or something, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, I guess it's it's hard for me to grasp. It's almost I don't know how to describe it.
So the experience here so far has been pretty good for you. Might you do it again, or might you open up a little bit, or?
There's nothing else. That's the whole story,
But you just told me you got a list of names that you haven't given me yet. So.
No, I mean, look, believe me, I could really make it easy to verify a bunch of things, and I do not want to do that at all. I really would prefer people don't buy the story, because it makes, my day-to-day life has nothing to do with UFOs, and being the UFO guy is a big problem. It's hard to get contracts and be, taken seriously, and I don't want, the last thing I want is, a movie coming out or something like that. It would be a catastrophe.
Well, it'd be a great movie if they made it right.
Well, I don't know.
It was amazing. A couple years ago, there's the story about this Russian spy that was killed by use of polonium. And so
they called me right away.
National Network people want to do a story. Let's see, where can we get polonium? And they find online, here's a guy who sells it. It's Bob Lazar.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they were at the house the first day. But
do you get stopped? I mean, you got people stop you on the road? I know you get emails and phone calls.
Well, emails, people asking, questions that, that really aren't up on the topic at all. It said, has anyone tried to, duplicate one of the crafts? Well, that was the whole aim of the project there. But they're just hearing that there's a guy that might have worked on flying saucers, and this is his email address. But by the way, I'm not on Facebook. There are these guys that pretend to be me, and I keep getting these emails. Hey, thanks for friending me on Facebook. What are you talking about?
I think this is our time. We're up. I've been asking questions submitted by folks, including in this, and I think that people are just excited to hear it directly from you tell the story. And again, I certainly understand why people would have a hard time believing it, but
I do too.
It's true.
I do too. Yeah, it really is. It really is.
It really happened.
Yeah, exactly that way. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoyed the conversation with Bob, and maybe I can pester him into doing this again sometime.
I don't know. Thank you very much. Thank you.